I used to believe the myth that you can't improve your LSAT reading comp score. People told me it was all about your natural reading ability. Yet I personally raised my overall LSAT score by 23 points, and a big part of that came from figuring out reading comp. This wasn't by magic or sheer luck. I used specific learnable techniques that anyone can apply. Today, I'm going to share every step I took so you can replicate and even surpass my results. First, for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT for 20 years. And when I first started, my LSAT score was nowhere near competitive. I was great at logic games once I put in enough practice, but reading comp felt like a black box. I wanted to read everything slowly, underline every important detail, and create detailed notes. Despite spending so much time on the passages, I still missed a bunch of questions. I realized that my approach was actually working against me. I had no time left for the questions, and the details I was frantically scribbling down weren't always the ones LSAT even asked me about on the test. After months of experimentation and some disappointing practice test results, I shifted my strategy completely. I stopped over-investing in the passages, and I started letting the questions guide me instead. That change alone was a game changer. The core concept I want to share with you today is to do less, but do it better. Reading comp is mostly about getting the big picture during your initial pass. If you try to absorb every detail before seeing the questions, you waste valuable time. Instead, let the questions dictate which details you actually need to revisit. Here's how this approach helped me. Faster passage reads. It let me cut down my reading time to under 3 minutes, which then gave me enough time left over to handle the more tricky questions. I also got to spend less time taking notes. When I realized my notes rarely matched what the questions were actually asking. Instead, I mentally filed away the big ideas, the purpose, and the overall structure. This approach also helps my students avoid distractions. While back when I took the LSAT, it was on paper, the LSAT, of course, is now online, and the digital tools for highlighting and underlining are glitchy. So highlighting is problematic, it's frustrating, and by avoiding a highlighting and underlining approach, that lets you prevent yourself from chasing minor details that might never show up in the questions. Now, secondly, you want to read for structure, not for details, not for the trivia of the passage. The LSAT focuses on testing your grasp of the passage's structure, how the arguments are laid out, how viewpoints intersect, and what the author's primary goal is. And so when you're reading the passage, you want to start by identifying the author's perspective. Is the author in favor of a viewpoint, against it, neutral, or are they just explaining? You also want to spot the shift where the passage transitions from providing background information to presenting the main argument, or shifting from one viewpoint to another. And if you see multiple viewpoints, you want to mentally label them viewpoint A, viewpoint B, or author's reconciliation. Now, here's why this works. Even if you don't remember every detail, you can easily look back. It's more important to know where to look than to memorize every fact. The LSAT often requires you to know which paragraph discussed a particular detail. If you know the purpose of each paragraph, you can find that information faster. Now let's talk about how to actually solve the questions. There is no rule that says you must answer reading comp questions in the order in which they're listed. In fact, doing them out of order can save you time. Here's how to do it. You want to tackle the global questions first. The big picture questions asking you about main idea, primary purpose, best title, or author's tone. You want to knock these out right after reading the passage. Next, you approach the detail-oriented questions. Once you've tackled the global questions, address the ones that direct you to a specific line or paragraph in the text. And finally, save the toughest questions for last, like inference questions that often demand that you read between the lines or look at multiple parts of the passage to help you solve just one question. Now, here's why this works. It lets you build momentum because global questions are often simpler once the passage is fresh in your mind. They also help you clarify your understanding of the passage before you get stuck in the weeds. And finally, it helps you save time because you don't get bogged down or stuck on tricky inferential questions early on. Now, I know LSAT passages are boring for most test takers. They pick weird, arcane topics to throw you off, but you've got to get past that. And I recommend that you do so by faking it till you make it. You've got to act like you're fascinated by the topic, pretend you love it, no matter how dry it is. If you're enthusiastic, it's going to boost your focus. You can also relate the topic to real-world scenarios. If two scientific theories are in conflict, think of it like two rival sports teams or two competing political viewpoints. And there are also common themes that show up over and over and over on the LSAT. One frequent theme is objectivism versus subjectivism, whether there's a single universal truth or whether things vary based on the observer. Now, here's why faking it till you make it works. It's because our brains retain information better when we're emotionally engaged. Even if you're faking the interest, it helps you remember the big ideas long enough to answer the questions. Now, there is plenty of practice material available to let you master LSAT reading comp. There are roughly 400 official reading comp passages available on LSAC's Law Hub platform. So ditch the outside reading. Don't read magazines like The Economist or Scientific American for the LSAT. Those are not written to be deliberately tricky. They're a lot easier and more accessible than actual LSAT passages. Now, one strategy you might use if you want to maximize the material that you're exposed to is to practice with older LSAT passages for casual reading, and then you save the newer ones for timed sections or full-length practice tests. This works because official passages reflect the exact style and difficulty you'll actually face on test day. Nothing else is better to prepare you for the exam's unique phrasing and question logic than real, actual official passages. Now, if you find reading on a screen difficult, especially dense text like LSAT passages, consider using speed reading apps to train yourself. Two tools I personally love are SpeedReader and PhraseReader. They're both free, and here's how they work. You copy-paste difficult, dense text like LSAT passages into the tools, which then display the text at adjustable speeds. You can gradually ramp up the words per minute as your comprehension improves. This works because it mimics test conditions. The real LSAT is online, so you've got to get comfortable reading dense text on a screen. It also boosts your focus because you train yourself to read more quickly without sacrificing accuracy. Now, here's a special tip for the dual or comparative passages. I know they can feel extra daunting for a lot of folks, but they don't need to be. What you do is you skim the questions first. I don't normally recommend this for the 3 long passages, but for the dual passages in particular, it can be helpful because if there's a question pertaining only to passage A, you solve it after reading passage A, then and only then move on to passage B. That way you're not cluttering your mind with details from both passages if you don't need them for a passage A specific question. By answering passage A questions immediately, you solidify your grasp of it before you mix in passage B's information. Now, LSAC does tend to recycle the same structural templates across different topics. And so if you can recognize common passage structures, you'll be able to get through them more quickly. Here are 2 common structures I see again and again in LSAT reading comp. The first is old versus new, where the passage discusses a conventional approach and then how a newer approach updates or challenges it. Another common structure is where you have 2 opposing views and then the author reconciles them. Again, this matters because if you can quickly identify the passage's structure, the questions become more predictable. You'll know what to look for, and you won't be thrown off by complex jargon. Now, as a drill or as an exercise, if you find a passage too dense or confusing, you can rewrite it in your own words. Yes, this is time-consuming. I wouldn't do it under time conditions, but it's worth it as a study exercise. Here's how to implement it. Step 1, you read a paragraph. Step 2, you pause. You summarize that paragraph in just 1 to 2 sentences as if you're explaining it to a friend or a 5-year-old. Step 3, you move on to the next paragraph. And step 4, you combine these mini summaries into a cohesive outline. The reason rewriting is so beneficial is because it helps you internalize the arguments and helps you clarify the structure. Over time, you become faster at translating complex LSAT language into simpler terms in your head. Now, the final strategy I want to share with you today is the Socratic review method, because if you want to drastically reduce repeating the same mistakes again and again, you've got to take the time to analyze why each wrong answer is incorrect and why the right one is correct, even if it seems imperfect. And beyond that, you've got to look at what is off about your thought process. Why did I misunderstand this? What specifically in the passage or question led me astray? Then you want to go back for each missed question and see how a better big picture grasp could have guided you to the right choice. This is your post-game or post-test analysis. And it works because it helps you gain a deep understanding of the passage and your approach to them. You're not just memorizing answers, but you're actually learning the logic behind them. It also helps you retain the material long term, because the next time you see a similar structure, your brain will recall the lesson from your review process. This is why the review process is so valuable and why at LSAT Unplugged, the Socratic review method is a cornerstone of our courses, our private one-on-one coaching program, and our small group program. If you'd like to find out more about how you can adopt this into your LSAT prep on your journey to mastering LSAT reading comp and scoring 170 plus on test day, my team and I would be glad to help you out. At LSAT Unplugged, we offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out, because reading comp doesn't have to be your Achilles heel. With the strategies that we apply, you can literally train yourself to read and think like an LSAT expert. Keep practicing, apply these techniques consistently, and you'll watch your score climb. Again, if you'd like my help, you could check out the links below. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.